.409 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, this is Mr. Toro from Texas.
It's who? Mr. Toro?
Mr. Toro from Texas.
Mr. Toro from Texas. What can I do for you, Mr. Toro?
Two things real quick, Sam. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on why this situation is different. After seeing the Tamir Rice tape and seeing the way this country reacted, it's surprising to me that we're at this point. So I want to know fundamentally what's changed. The second thing I got, Sam, is without getting into the conversation we don't want to talk about, I want to get your thoughts on these pundits, people on the online left that are just critical of everything, mostly focusing on the left without any critique of the right. And, you know, the situation where nobody's progressive enough. You're not progressive enough. Jank's not progressive enough. Kyle's not progressive enough. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the pitfalls of the online left, and I'll listen.
All right. Appreciate the phone call. First off, what I think is different right now on some level is that I think it's a combination of things. I think at one point you get just a critical mass.
Snowball effect.
Yeah. And that it is a relatively new phenomena that we have videotape of all this stuff. Right. I mean, it is really on the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years where this stuff has become so ubiquitous, and a combination of video and social media makes it really, really hard for people to be ignorant or willfully ignorant. You know, there's different people have different sort of concepts of how much do we know about the sins of society and how much do we want to know about the sins of society and this and that. And without litigating that, this makes it very hard to deny it. So I think that's a critical mass. I think that the frustration that people feel in the context of coronavirus, I think added to it without a doubt. I think the idea that there are people who perceive this as a political expediency. The Democrats really tried to be opportunistic with this. I don't think they were able to co-opt it, fortunately, but they tried. And I think it, ends up bringing some people along that weren't quite there because they perceive this as something also that is detrimental to Donald Trump. And I think it is. Certainly what happened in that square in Washington, D.C. was very problematic for him. So I think all these things are conspiring. And I think also that, the idea that there are so many, that Minneapolis was the perfect place to make the argument that the reforms that were proposed before don't work, right? The experiment is over. And 5 years is a long enough time where you would expect it to stick. And I think there's enough ideas out there to do this. And it's these are fairly obvious things. They dovetail with things like decriminalized drugs. There are all these sort of parallel, I think, political pushes. And I think that's why. But I'm also not 100% convinced that it's game, set, match. But it definitely...
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think this could be the start of something, but we really, really need to keep it up. I'm already seeing people self-appointed leaders from the NGO sector or from, democratic politics trying to co-opt this movement to varying degrees of success. And we can't let that happen. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be having general assemblies, talking about strategy, talking about demands. All the different groups and individuals participating in these protests need to get to know each other and figure out what we do next. Also, people are out of work right now, so they've got nothing else to do.
Yep.
They're going to go out in the streets because they're pissed off. Even people who've been staying in their houses this whole time, obeying the quarantine, while simultaneously local governments and federal governments have been imposing austerity on them giving them a $1,200 check and telling them, good luck. Like, people are mad and they've got time on their hands.
Well, that austerity too is, I think, could end up providing a little bit of impetus for the cities and the states, because they don't have the resources. They have yet to get the federal funding and bailout that they need. And so that may also help push budget cuts to the police, frankly. But we'll see how that plays out. In terms of the second part of what the caller said, I don't, different strokes for different folks in terms of like, people don't, I'm people can make the argument about how left or they want. I think there's a lot of people out there who conflate being an establishment contrarian with necessarily leftist politics. Because for me, I'm interested in outcomes and the quickest way to changes in society that I seek. I don't, if it involves leveraging establishment people, fine. If it doesn't, fine. I don't care. I'm agnostic as to those questions. I see some structural problems, obviously, with certain individuals and certain types of individuals, I should say, and class structures. But I'm not, that the idea that there are people to the left of me is more than fine. It makes my goals that much more attainable, frankly.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when 15 years ago, in terms of like mass communication, there just wasn't people who were to the left of me. There just wasn't like mechanisms. They didn't exist. And
now you have 100,000 internet users that are all to the left of Noam Chomsky in their minds.
Yeah. And I don't know if they are or they're not, but the point is that like that discourse is very, very helpful. With the stuff where it's like they're just contrarians who want to burn everything down because it's good for their brand. Yeah, I think that's problematic. And I don't think that, I think there are times where that's worse than other times. I feel like those people are just not being, taken very seriously by very many people. Maybe enough to support them in their various outlets, but in terms of like the political influence, I think that it's just not there. I mean, we were told, right, that the election of Donald Trump by a lot of these people was going to bring about a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, I think, some of these people said. And I think they were wrong. I mean, I don't think they were wrong. They were wrong. That's just the reality. I think that the left is going to grow with Joe Biden presidency, because he is not going to be he is not going to provide the sufficient change that we need, but he is going to provide like the sense that things could change. And I think we're going to see the pressure. Now there's like just the dynamics are very different than even in 2018. Like just with think about like the Congress people that we talk about on the show on a daily basis. Half of them weren't in, 3/4 of them were not in office, in 2017. The Congressional Progressive Caucus had much more anemic leadership. I think it's just like, to a certain extent, I think it's just time and, and whatnot in terms of the new generations, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I would add one point about the media critique that this person brought up. I think there's a difference between making valid critiques of the things that somebody is saying in their media project and the funding structures and business models of that project. That's different than like just being a hater or just doing purity politics or whatever. And I feel like that is something people use a lot of the time to deflect legitimate criticism rather than engage with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, I think I would be lying if I said I follow a lot of this because it's enough just to do this show. But, you know, phone lines are open. Happy to address any critique.
Yeah, if those shows were so good, we wouldn't have to make this one.
True.
Fair enough. It is really, I find it obnoxious to not address those critiques when they come up. I just find that obnoxious. I mean, I'll go, you know, on to just about anybody's show, maybe not Gavin's, unless he pays me a lot of money. If he had said for free in the beginning, I might have gone on. But once I saw like $5,000, I was like, wait a second, I'll do it for $250.
What about would you do Tim Pool again?
Would I go on with Tim Pool again? Yeah, I would. Sure. Why not? I mean, I don't know if I would commit to as much time, but yeah, I'm ready for a round two. Calling from a 516 area code. Who's this?